Good morning, my beautiful badass friends out there. Welcome to today's discussion. This is episode 2 of Boundaries, the 7 essential boundaries for your well-being. These 7 essential boundaries are really tailored for codependents. They help us keep ourselves in our yard, in our container, and help us understand what is and isn't ours in that regard. So, welcome. If you're new to me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and what I do is I help codependents be happy again. I help them discover and restore their safety, sanity, and self, and help them come to know, love, and live who they are, and create relationships in their life that they love and that they enjoy. Ultimately, that's the goal, helping you restore your safety, your happiness, and your satisfaction in life, so that you can go on and enjoy the life you have for you. All right. So before we get started, I need to share this out to the community. The community is your safe haven here on the internet, where you can find guidance, tools, and support in your journey back to yourself, back to your happiness, back to your well-being. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. So I'm going to click the share button here and send it over to the community here. And it is done. All right. Excellent. So the 7 essential boundaries. So yesterday, or in the previous boundaries video, we discussed what boundaries are, and as a kind of a review on that, boundaries are a container. They dictate what we allow in and what we remove from our yard. They guide our behavior, not the other person's behavior. Hey, Candy. Nice to see you. So these 7 essential boundaries are going to help us accomplish some of that, and they're fundamental for us in our well-being and our happiness beyond codependency. Now, boundaries are a filter. They help us understand where a person fits in our world. They also help us understand where we fit in theirs, and helps us understand what's ours and what is not ours, but what is theirs and is exclusively something they need to manage or something that we need to manage that are ours. The link to these 7 essential boundaries, I've created a little quick list of mine. It's above in the description on Facebook, below on YouTube, and you can then download it, use it, print it, whatever works for you in making that happen, helping it be a reminder. So I provided that for you as well. So let's jump in here. All right, so boundary number 1. They are responsible for meeting their needs and wants, and you are responsible for meeting your needs and wants. And that meeting, that fulfillment happens through consent. And that happens, consent is created through asking. Asking for what you want, asking for what you don't want too, saying no, saying yes. And then allowing people to show up and share and make requests of you. Because everyone, we all have a right to ask, but we do not have a right to demand. We have a right to ask, but we don't have a right to expect. Expectations are tricky little one, because it's a product of immaturity. Expectation fundamentally is actually a desire we have, and that it is something we need to convert to a request rather than a silent demand. So expectations, keep an eye out for those, and then turn them into requests, because it's like, oh, I'd like this with you, and then we see what they consent to. That allows us to build a genuinely safe and honest relationship, one that's really built on connection and intimacy and clarity there. So again, boundary number 1, their needs are theirs, your needs are yours, and that you meet them through consent and through asking. This allows us to be free of the responsibility for them. And it's a fundamental aspect of respect, because what we're really doing is respecting our own adulthood and their adulthood. They're an adult. They can learn to ask for their needs and be direct, clear, and simple with them. That makes this a lot simpler. So we don't have to be mind reading anymore. We don't have to be anticipating anymore. And they can just simply ask, or we can simply ask. And an easy, simple way to ask is, you've got a desire, let's say the desire to have pizza, then make it really clear, really direct, and really simple. Well, it'd be like this. I would like you, person A, to order me a pepperoni pizza from Papa Murphy's at 12 p.m. today. Or I'd like it by noon. And then they'll say yes or no to this thing. And then you know what to do there. Nobody is obligated to say yes to our requests, and we are not obligated to say yes to theirs. It is something we get to slow down in and check in with ourselves and go, do I want to do this? Does this align for me? Am I happy about this? Do I want to? Do I want to? Do I have capacity to? Does this add to or take away from my well-being and happiness? We got to answer those questions to understand where we're at and what we want. It helps us do the proper order of relating, which is me, then you. So I know where I'm at. I know I can honestly consent to that it will add to my well-being and happiness and contribute to yours. All right. That's boundary number 1. Boundary number 2, they are responsible for regulating their feelings. You are responsible for regulating yours. This can feel really complex and a little messy because it's like, well, aren't they responsible for what they made me feel when they did the thing? No. They're responsible for what they did, and they're responsible for owning the impact, and the impact is, hey, I see it hurt you. I care about that. This matters to me. I'd like to understand what I could do differently. That's ownership. They acknowledge your feelings. They acknowledge their behavior. They acknowledge what the result was. Those feelings within you, though, are yours. They've always been yours. They always will be yours because they are a product, a result of your programming, your psychology, your person. And so you are responsible for regulating and caring for them, and they are responsible for caring and regulating for theirs. And that shows up like this. So someone does something that hurts me, then I honor that hurt. I'm like, wow, that really hurt. And then I communicate that hurt. And it's like, hey, when person A, when you did this, this hurt me. I felt really sad about this. It scared me. And then I see what they do. And if they're like, well, get over it, you're just too sensitive. I'm like, wow, no, you don't seem to care about your impact. And you don't really have regard or care for how I feel. So you get to be outside my world. Especially if that's a pattern. That is not a tolerable thing. But if they respond like, oh, I see. Okay, I can understand that. What can I do differently next time that would help you feel safe? Boom. We're right there. Maybe they're like, I'm confused. I don't understand what I did. And then you could tell them. And then they'd receive it and correct it. Maybe it's more sometimes it can be more complex. So it's more like, okay, I can see why you feel that way, but I don't feel like I did something wrong. Well, it's like, okay. The thing when that happens is to understand that the impact still mattered and that maybe we as an individual can correct our behavior or change it so it's better for that individual. Because we all have things that are activating for us that are results of behaviors that are maybe innocuous, maybe like particular kinds of humor, particular types of affection don't work for us, but they work for that person. Well, if we're the person that's getting this feedback going, wow, this doesn't work for me, then we would want to accommodate that. I'd be like, okay, I understand that doesn't work for you. Here's what would you like me to do differently? That allows us to build love and intimacy. But this is also a product of being responsible for our feelings, owning them, rather than displacing or blaming them on someone else for what they did. Accountability is about what they did, and we own and we own our feelings. We're like, okay, this is how it worked for me. What do I need to do here? So that's how we care for ourselves. Boundary number 3, abuse is non-negotiable and non-tolerable behavior from them or yourself you leave if abuse shows up. We have what I call undue tolerance. We have tolerated abuse way too much in our world. We have not done, we've made it a very normal experience in which, well, abuse is just part of the relationship. This is the stuff of the work that we do in it. And that is not what's going on. That's not healthy at all. Abuse is an abnormal function in relationship. It is not normal. It is not something that we ought to be tolerating. It's something we need to call out And it is something we need to take seriously for protecting and nurturing our well-being. We need to be able to move beyond abuse and beyond relationships that are abusive to relationships that are nurturing, kind, and attentive. And that requires us to have some very strong, high standards about ourselves. And it's like, well, abuse is not an option. See, abuse is a product of entitled victimhood thinking. This is something that someone feels like they have the right to displace their pain onto someone else and get away with it because they're in pain or they're the victim or some other kind of reasoning. No, there is no justification for abusive behavior, period. That's why I have that as a rule. It's a zero tolerance boundary. You deserve respect, you deserve safety, and you deserve consideration. And if someone's harming you and abusing you, then they're demonstrating that they neither care about your safety or your well-being and have no regard for you. They feel entitled to displace pain onto you, to cause you pain, instead of actually being an adult, being responsible for their feelings, and taking care of it in a kind and loving way. So, a little blunt cake there. So boundary number 3, we don't tolerate abuse, and if there's abuse in the relationship, we leave. And I'm very firm on that. If the person is unwilling to take responsibility for their abusive behavior and change it, get out. For me, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, well, if you're going to be abusive, you're out. I just don't tolerate it anymore. I don't give people any chances on it, basically. But if you want to, that's your choice. Because you're the one that lives with the consequence. You know your situation best, but be mindful of being trapped into the fantasy that maybe they'll change. Because often people who are abusive don't change. And when they do, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Speaking as someone who was abusive and it made these changes, it took me several years and a lot of deep work. And guess what? It didn't change because somebody else was nice to me. I didn't change because someone else tolerated me. I changed because I realized that this is not the person I wanted to be. I had to make a determination as to, hey, I'm actually not being a kind person here. I'm not justified in doing this. I'm hurting people. It's got to stop. So, yeah, that's why I have that rule there. Very, very firm on that. And then let's go back to it. Oop, I lost it. Did I just screw this up? I might have. We'll see. Okay, there. Boundary number 4, respect your boundaries, your wants, needs, and your feelings are mandatory. So respect for them, respect of them is mandatory. This is one of those standards we have in relationship where it's like, well, if I'm not, my feelings, my wants, my needs, my person are not being respected, they're not being valued, they're not being treated with some importance and priority by the other person or by myself, I've got a problem if it's with myself. But if it's someone else, then this is not the right person for me. This is not a healthy relationship for me. That's a firm, you apply this to your world, you're going to stop having toxic people in your world very, very quickly. Because you'll be like, oh, you don't really care about these things. You're also going to find out who belongs where in your world and what kind of proximity you want with certain individuals. But when it comes to a primary relationship, this has to be a fundamental in it. Because primary healthy relationships are geared around, I care about how you feel, I care about your well-being, and that's a product of it. They respect your needs, wants, and feelings, and your person. Respect for your boundaries is essential. Because when someone respects your boundaries, they are respecting and valuing, treating with importance your sovereignty, your safety, your well-being, your person. They're acknowledging through their behavior they understand consent and privilege, and they're not coming from an entitlement or obligation point of view in a relationship. Respect of boundaries communicates a lot about a person, their maturity, and their safety as an individual. So now if you're not respecting your own boundaries, your own feelings, your own wants, your own needs, this is likely being driven by shame and by a fear of being discarded because you're not pleasing someone else, and that would be the root of codependency there. And so I would recommend working on that, focusing on elevating your sense of worth by healing the internalized shame, by healing the trauma that we go through with discard, especially narcissistic abuse, and getting connected back to yourself. So I do that through restoring safety, sanity, and self. It's accomplished through the Heal Yourself strategy. It gets you rooted back into your value, back into your well-being and sanity so that you can thrive and grow in your world. All right. So number 5, boundary number 5 is reliability and accountability and integrity in your behavior and theirs is mandatory for trust and vulnerability. So a lot of times we, as codependents, we give away our trust. We are far too vulnerable with the other individual, and I haven't earned it. We also think that trust is given, not earned. Trust is earned. Trust is earned through patterns of behavior, specifically reliable patterns of behavior in what's called the 8 relationship bare minimums, which is derived from Brene Brown's Braving model for trust, which is boundaries, reliability, accountability, privacy, integrity, acceptance, positive warm regard, and empathy. Those are the 8 relationship bare minimums. Reliability and accountability and integrity is absolutely essential in that. If the person is not going to take accountability, they will not have integrity. Thus, they cannot be reliable or safe because they will end up violating boundaries. Acceptance will degrade into criticism and judgment. Positive warm regard won't exist. Instead, you'll have ill regard and suspicion there. There won't be any empathy because they feel justified in their position and they're not really oriented towards your well-being and understanding and connecting with you. They're oriented towards what I call benefits, and that would be all about the cookie, whatever they get from the relationship and they think they're entitled to from you. So if you want to smoke out a healthy or unhealthy person, watch how they take accountability and watch how they maintain their integrity. Integrity is that they walk their talk. Integrity is that they change when they say they're going to. Integrity is that they update their agreements when they realize those agreements no longer work for them. That's what you're looking for there. And then when accountability is, hey, I did that, what can I do differently? Then they make the change. So accountability is an action-based thing, not a verbal-based thing that way. Boundary number 6, your focus is on your needs and wants, your feelings and your perspective. What do you think and feel about what's happening? So we move towards what I call internal orientation with this boundary, because in codependency, we're externally oriented. We are viewing ourselves and the world and what's going on through the eyes of other people. We are not checking in with ourselves. We're not tuning in to our body going, what do I think? What do I feel? What matters to me here? And that's what we need to be doing. That's where this me, then you order of relating comes in, because I'm checking in with myself. I'm orienting to my own wisdom, my own perspective, my own needs and wants, my own values and standards, and then making decisions based on that rather than, well, what will make them happy? What will please them? What will get them to love me? What will get them to accept me? Instead, I'm like, what do I need? What do I want? What do I value here? And then I share that and I pursue that and I see what other people do. And based on their reactions, I learn where they belong in my world. That's how we do that. That's what keeps us safe and secure in that. It's also where we build and discover compatible relationships with people. So that's a biggie there. Okay. And then boundary number 7, choose your relationships based on how they treat your feelings, wants, needs, and boundaries, how they handle conflict, and not just in how you feel about them. So how we feel about someone matters, but it's not why we keep them. It's not why we commit or choose relationships. We choose relationships based on compatibility and based on the level of satisfaction we experience in it. And that is a product of how the other person treats your feelings, your wants, your needs, how they handle conflict and communication, how you guys build secure attachment, how you play together, how you have companionship, intimacy, and support. That really matters. Because if it's not functional, meaning if the relationship doesn't function in a way that adds to your well-being and happiness on a reliable basis, then it's not a relationship that's going to last. It's not a relationship that's going to be healthy. It's a relationship that's going to hurt and harm or take away from you. And if you're going to come from a respect for your needs, wants, feelings, your own well-being and person, then that has to become a priority. We have to treat ourselves with that fundamental respect about what's really going on. That gets back to what I call the 2 commitments. 2 commitments is honesty about what's going on, what we feel about it, and how it's impacting us. And the second commitment is loyalty to our well-being and our own happiness. We need to be loyal to ourselves. We have to be willing to rock the boat. We have to be willing to go without in order to find the right and healthy and sustainable relationships in our world. That means being alone for a while. That means confronting loneliness. That means building stronger friendships and platonic bonds and building a support network so that we're not completely isolated in just a primary relationship. And that's big work. I mean, that's where we find our safety. That's where we find our fulfillment as well. So, all right. So, my friends, those are the 7 essential boundaries for your well-being. So go out there, apply them, explore with them, play with them, see what you start to discover about yourself, about others, about the world, as you try to work these into your daily experience of living beyond codependency. And let's see what you discover. Because that's how we grow. That's how we make it happen. Thank you, my friends, for showing up today. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And if you're looking for assistance in making these things real and natural in your world, I highly recommend enrolling in the Heal Yourself Strategy. It's always open for enrollment. The link is above on Facebook and below on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you again, Candy, Robin, and Satori, for your comments, for your support. And have a great day. I'll see you guys in our next video. Bye-bye.